سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن عليا ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله صلوات الله عليه وآله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم اجعل قلبي بارا وعملي شعرا وعيشي كارا واسكدارا وأولاد برارا واجعل عند قبر النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم مسترقا وقرارا برحمتك يا رب العالمين. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى. نحمده ونستعينه ونثني عليه ونؤمن به، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف بريته ومبلغ رسالاته العبد المؤيد الرسول المسدد المحمود الأحمد أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين. عباد الله، أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. We begin this first Friday khutbah by reminding all of you and myself to maintain the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We'll continue our discussion on the topic of at-tafarrugh lil-ibadah, dedicating time and attention for worship. We went through a number of narrations in which multiple individuals from the Ahlul Bayt made it clear to us that that portion of the ibadah is going to count for us, that we actually put our heart into it. Our attention was actually dedicated to that portion of the prayer, for example. And hence we find this narration in Al-Kafir is narrated both from the 5th Imam as well as the 6th Imam, Al-Imam Al-Baqir and Al-Imam Al-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. They said, إِنَّمَا لَكَ مِنْ صَلَاتِكَ مَا أَقْبَلْتَ عَلَيْهِ مِنْهَا. Only that portion of your salat belongs to you. Only that portion of your salat is actually yours. That you were actually paying attention in it. You were turning towards it, meaning your heart was in it. فَإِنْ أَوْهَمَهَا كُلَّهَا أَوْ غَفَلَ عَنْ آدَابِهَا لُفَّتْ فَضُرِبَتْ بِهَا وَجْهُ صَاحِبِهَا. The narration said if he was praying and he didn't pay attention throughout his whole salat, or he prayed without paying attention to any of the adab of salat, meaning he did the bare minimum of prayer. He prayed, but his only concern was just doing the wajib and no attention in the salat, no extra step in the salat. Then the narration says the salat is thrown back at him or is thrown in his face. And there's multiple narrations that indicate the same thing. And this is not to indicate that this person is a bad person. It is to indicate that he messed up a golden opportunity. He had amazing potential in his salat. He did not fulfill the potential in this salat. Now this salat is 5 times every day. I've made this point in the past. I will reiterate this point now as well. Within our cultures, especially when Ramadan comes around, you hear this a lot. Within our cultures, we have this idea that there's some other acts of worship out there. There's some other list of deeds out there. When I'm done with these basic ones, like praying and fasting and observing my proper dress code and staying away from listening to music, then after that, you're going to get to the really important ones. This is the typical understanding that we have. That there's some other list of deeds that when you take care of these ones, or you kind of, set them aside, these are, basic, maybe intermediary. But then there's some advanced rules when you get there, and then those are the important ones. When you look into the words of the Ahlul Bayt, this is the opposite of what you find. What you find from them was that this salat that you do 5 times a day, that's so usual for us, it's so normal for us, it feels like it's just another day. They said if you do a good job with this, first of all, it will have a big impact in your life. And number 2, you'll see how difficult it is and how much work it takes. 5 times a day. You're telling me in this busy life that we have, with all the different concerns and worries that we have, it's work, it's friends, it's relatives, children, all the things that we have on our minds, yes? 5 times a day, the Ahlul Bayt said, okay, you have to drop all of that. You have to give your attention fully to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's not easy. That's a lifetime of work. So why is it within our communities we always look for some special recommendations? Like, okay, I do the 5 daily salats. Okay, yeah. What else is there, Maulana? What else am I supposed to do? No, did you perfect this salat? Perfecting this salat is not easy, number 1. And number 2, it has a big impact on the life of the human being. If I really do salat properly 5 times a day, it will change my life. It will revolutionize my life. Because 5 times every day, it's like I'm going through a day of judgment. 5 times every day. Salat is what? You do qiyam. Many scholars point out the whole point of qiyam is what? To remind you of that moment, يَوْمَ يَقُومُ النَّاسُ لِرَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ, when people stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment. So salat 5 times a day is supposed to remind me of that moment where I'm standing in front of Him and He's asking me, why did you do this? Why did you do that? It's supposed to reenact that moment for me. So a person who goes through ma'ad, goes through the day of judgment 5 times every day, his life is going to be the same as someone who's just going on with their 9 to 5 and as if nothing. No, it's going to make a big difference. The only question is, when you and I pray, do we really enact that moment? Or is it just some ritualistic thing we do and then we tell our children, yeah, you have to bow down to God 5 times a day, otherwise He's going to be very upset with you. Is this the way we speak of salat? Or do we really fulfill its potential? Fulfill its potential And you will see, brothers and sisters, the type of impact that it has. Therefore, the Imam made it clear, only that portion of your salat is going to count, that أَقْبَلَ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنْهَا, that portion that you were actually paying attention during its time. And that is why we come across this second narration, and this is also from our sixth Imam, Al-Imam As-Sadiq, salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayhi. He said, Ya Abdullah, he's narrating or he's sharing this with Abdullah ibn Abi Ya'fur. Abdullah ibn Abi Ya'fur is a famous companion of the sixth Imam. Full submission he had to the sixth Imam. He told Abdullah, so this is Abu Abdullah telling Abdullah. He said, Ya Abdullah, إذا صليت فصل صلاة مودع يخاف أن لا يعود إليها أبدا. When you pray like the one who's saying farewell to salat, has the concern that he will never have the opportunity to come back to the salat. ثم اصرف ببصرك إلى موضع سجودك. So when you pray, put your head down and your eyesight down. فلو تعلم من عن يمينك وشمالك لأحسنت صلاتك. If you knew when you stand to pray who's standing on your right side and who's standing on your left side, you would take your salat seriously. You don't realize who's standing beside you. You just assume you stood somewhere, you said Allahu Akbar and you started praying. Hundreds of narrations of Ahlul Bayt tell us that in those moments, some of the biggest things that will happen in your spiritual life are taking place in those moments. But you and I, we just say Allahu Akbar and we move on because we look around us, the ground's the same ground, the sky's the same sky, not much changed, yes? But the narrations say there's a lot happening around you. وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّكَ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ مَنْ يَرَاكَ وَلَا تَرَاهُ. And know that you are in the presence of the one who you don't see him, but he sees you. He is looking down on you. Okay, the narrations tell us that of these acts of worship, salat ranks at the highest. If you wanted to go to the mustahabbat, of the most important of them is the nawafil. Narrations told us that if the person does his salat and he doesn't do the best job with his salat, he prays, but he feels like I wasn't really paying attention. I missed out on 2/3 of my salat, 4/5 of my salat sometimes. I missed out on all of this. So what am I supposed to do? The Ahlul Bayt said this is why nawafil were legislated. Nawafil is what? Nawafil is the daily mustahab salat. We have mustahab salats, like Salatul-Eid, for example, and so on and so forth. Then you have daily mustahab salats. And this is part of the reason why Salatul Layl, Tahajjud, Namaz al-Shab, all these words and terms that we use to refer to that concept, this is part of the reason why it's so important, because it is what? It is one of those nawafil. The nafila that you do in the middle of the night is Salatul Layl. Okay. The narrations tell us that if a human being does his salat properly and he empties his heart when it comes to salat, tafarrugh lil ibadah, one of the elements that will take place in his life is a sense of fulfillment in his life. Then his rushing and hurrying to get his hands on the pleasures of this world, he starts to set that aside a little bit. Because if I'm rushing so much and I always feel unfulfilled, I always feel like whatever I get, I still want more. I still need more. I have fame, I want some more. I have wealth, I want some more. I have good children, but they could be even better. I have a good wife or husband, but there's some things that are lacking. I have a house, but it could have 5 extra bedrooms. I have this, but it could extra have this. This is how the human being has been created. This is why you chase God, because you're never happy with anything that is limited. But then the narrations taught us that if you want that sense of fulfillment, this comes through ibadah. And to the extent that I empty my heart when I come to do worship is the same extent of the sense of fulfillment that I will feel. The one who comes, rushes through his salah, just throws it on the side as if it's, something that's not even, doesn't even count, and then moves on with life, he will not feel the sense of fulfillment in his salat. The one who pays attention when he comes to his salat, invests in his salat, he will feel a sense of fulfillment. Where does this fulfillment show itself? Of course, it showed itself the most with our beloved Prophet, Muhammadin al-Mustafa, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. Look at the sense of fulfillment that the Prophet had. That when Jibreel used to come to him and tell him, listen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is putting in front of you a deal. Except this deal is a win-win. There's no loss in this deal. The deal is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to give you the keys to the heavens and the earth. The keys to the treasures of this world. Anything you want. Yes? And if you take it, no part of your status in the eyes of God will be lessened. So it's not even a thing where you say, okay, he's not going to take it because then God's not going to like it. No, Jibreel told him, your status in the eyes of God will be the same. But you can have the keys to this world. You can have the keys to the treasures of this world. Do you want to take it or no? And then you see, the Prophet speaks of the pleasures of this world and the treasures of this world in such a way that he kind of belittles them. In some ways, it's almost disrespectful to the dunya. Because now if they tell you have to sacrifice to get your hands on something, and you say, I don't want to go through that sacrifice, that's one thing. It's another thing when they tell you you don't have to sacrifice. You know, when you go up to someone and you offer something for free to them. Give them something for free. And still the person says, no, I'm fine. Sometimes you walk away, you feel disrespected. So I gave you this for free. I told you you didn't even have to do anything for it. And still you're saying you don't want it. So this is what happened. So this narration is in Al-Kafi. The sixth Imam is narrating. Abu Abdullah says, يقول إن جبرائيل عليه السلام أتى رسول الله. That Jibreel came to the Prophet one day. فخيره, he gave him the option. وأشار عليه بالتواضع وكان له ناصحا فكان رسول الله يأكل إكلة العبيد or أكلة العبيد ويجلس جلسة العبد تواضعا لله ثم أتاه عند الموت. He came to him in the final moments of his life. ثم أتاه عند الموت بمفاتيح خزائن الدنيا, with the keys of the treasures of this world. فقال, he told him, هذه مفاتيح خزائن الدنيا بعث بها إليك ربك. These are the keys to the treasures of this world. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the keys your way. He's bringing you the keys to the treasures of this world. ليكون لك ما أقلت الأرض من غير أن ينقصك شيئا. He wants you to have these keys, the treasures of this world, min ghayra an yanqusaka shay'a, without it affecting your spiritual status. It's like for free. You're not even going to give up on anything to have these. Okay, this is what Jibreel came and told him. So what did he say? فَقَالَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ, the messenger of Allah said, فِي الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى. I don't need any of this. I might as well, فِي الرَّفِيقِ الْأَعْلَى means when I'm in that high companionship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'll take that. I don't need the pleasures of this world. I don't need the treasures of this world. Why? The next Imams, they came and they did commentary on what the Prophet said. They said, you know why the Prophet did this? Because the Prophet wanted to do ihana. The Prophet wanted to belittle and dismiss the pleasures of this world. I can get my hands on it without sacrificing anything, and I'm still saying I don't want it. Not because I have to give up something, but because you understand that this is not worth anything. Okay, so how did the Prophet reach this sense of fulfillment? Part of it was his ibadah. Part of it was his worship. That worship that has the heart of the human being inside of it, that builds this sense of fulfillment. To the extent that the human being worships like this, he walks away from his prayer with a sense of fulfillment. You know, we say, was my salat qabool? Was my salat not qabool? How do I know if God accepted my salat? How do I know if God rejected my salat? Narrations mention multiple signs. Of those signs is that when you walk away, did you disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the same way you disobeyed Him before your salat or not? If that's the answer is yes, then this salat was not accepted. It didn't have an impact. Of those signs is what sense of fulfillment I walk away with when I walk away from my salat. I walk away from my salat. Do I feel like, you know what? I'm fine. Life has ups and downs, but I have a sense of fulfillment in my heart. Or do I walk away and there's hollowness in my heart? Do I feel like I have to go chase after the dunya? This is one of the other signs of how effective my salat, in fact, was. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who come and pray and perfect their salat such that we have a sense of fulfillment and we stop chasing the pleasures of the dunya. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين أثني عليه حامدا وأذكره مسبحا ثم أصلي وأسلم على نجيبه وجليله وحافظ سره الذي سمي في السماء بأحمد وفي الأراضين بأبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم صل وسلم على علي أمير المؤمنين وفاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين وعلى سبطي نبي الرحمة وإمامي الهدى الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي حججك على عبادك وأمنائك في أرضك صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات عباد الله أوصيكم ونفسي بتقوى الله. We begin the second Friday khutbah by reminding all of you and myself to maintain the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We reach verses 17 onwards from Surah Qaf. إِذْ يَتَلَقَّى الْمُتَلَقِّيَانِ عَنِ الْيَمِينِ وَعَنِ الشِّمَالِ قَعِيدٌ مَا يَلْفِظُ مِنْ قَوْلٍ إِلَّا لَدَيْهِ رَقِيبٌ عَتِيدٌ. Whatever this human being utters with his tongue, there are angels who are constantly watching him. وَجَاءَتْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ بِالْحَقِّ ذَلِكَ مَا كُنْتَ مِنْهُ تَحِيدٌ. Then the intoxication of the moments of death come, and that is certainly what he constantly feared. Now, this is, of course, referring to that human being who otherwise did nothing to prepare for these moments. And we said that the Quran very boldly refers to those moments of death as sakratul maut, the intoxication. Why? Because the difficulty is so much, it's almost as if this person's lost his mind. The way he interacts with his relatives in those moments, with those who are around him, it almost feels like he's lost it. But it's not because he's lost it. It's because he understands so well what's happening in those moments, and the pressure is so great for him that it appears as though he's lost it in those moments. Okay. So the narrations speak quite a bit about sakratul maut, the intoxication of those moments of death. And the first Imam, Ali ibn Abi Talib, salawatullahi wassalamuhu alayhi, he shared with us those moments of what happens for the human being when his loved ones are around him. Yes, these are difficult moments. He said, فَغَيْرُ مَوْصُوفٍ مَا نَزَلَ بِهِمْ اجْتَمَدْ عَلَيْهِمْ سَكْرَةُ الْمَوْتِ وَحَسْرَةُ الْفَوْتِ. In those moments, he's going through the difficulties of leaving this world. At the same time, he has hasratul fawt. His mind is busy with all of the opportunities that he lost. Very difficult moments. Then he continued, ثُمَّ ازْدَادَ الْمَوْتُ فِيهِمْ وُلُوجًا. Then death starts to seep into him more. فَحِيلَ بَيْنَ أَحَدِهِمْ وَبَيْنَ مَنْتِقِهِ. Now when he speaks, he can't utter words anymore. He can hear what the people around him are saying, but he cannot communicate with them. وَإِنَّهُ لَبَيْنُ أَهْلِهِ. He's amongst his relatives and his friends. يَنْظُرُ بِبَصَرِهِ وَيَسْمَعُ بِأُذُنِهِ. He can see what's happening and he can hear what's happening. So he might be able to see the doctors rushing into the room. He might be able to see the nurses coming in. He might be able to see his own relatives crying around him. But his connection from his end has now been cut off with this world. Okay. Then the narration continued. He said, in these moments, he's thinking about all of the wealth that he gathered. that he didn't give in the ways that he was supposed to give. He thinks about those things that he kept for himself, and now those things have become a means of punishment for him. He sacrificed his values to become famous. Now he's regretting that he ever became famous. Now he says, I wish someone else had become famous instead of me. So that thing that people used to regret about him in this life, now he regrets that I wish someone else had this and I wasn't the one who had this. Because now this became a problem for him. Sometimes it's wealth. Sometimes it's business contracts. Sometimes it could be all sorts of things. These things that we look at and sometimes we wish, Ya Allah, I pray to you, if only you had given me this. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, I can see if I give you this, in the moments of your death, you will regret having this. Because it will impact you in such a negative way. At that point, you'll say, Ya Allah, why did you give it to me? This is the moments that he's going through. فَهُوَ يَعُذُّ يَدَهُ نَدَامَةً عَلَى مَا أَسْحَرَ لَهُ عِنْدَ الْمَوْتِ مِنْ أَمْرِهِ. Now he's biting his finger in his hand out of regrets. Because now the reality of things has become clear to him. Before, he was walking away with this fame, whether it was wealth, it was his beauty, whatever it was. And people used to look up to him and say, wow, good for you. Now things have become clear. يَعُذُّ يَدَهُ نَدَامَةً. Now he regrets it. And he bites his hand. This is terminology that the Quran also uses as well. Okay. Then it says what? وَيَزْهَدُ فِيمَا كَانَ يَرْغَبُ فِيهِ أَيَّامَ عُمْرِهِ. Now all of a sudden, he's not interested in all the things that his whole life he had spent trying to get his hands on. All of a sudden, he's not interested in any of this. So if you asked him 2 months ago, say, yes, the most important thing for me right now is to be able to get this business. Now you ask him, he's doing zuhd. He doesn't care about this stuff anymore. Okay. وَيَتَمَنَّى أَنَّ الَّذِي كَانَ يَغْبِتُهُ بِهَا وَيَحْسُدُهُ عَلَيْهَا قَدْ حَازَهَا دُونَهُ. He wishes the things that he always wanted, that other people could have gotten these things. Because if I hadn't gotten them, I wouldn't have to answer for them. But he got them, sometimes in a haram way, or he got them in a halal way, but he misused them once he got them. Now he has to answer for them. So I wish someone else had this. I don't have to deal with the headache. فَلَمْ يَزَلِ الْمَوْتِ يُبَالِغُ فِي جَسَدِهِ. But now death doesn't stop here. Death continues to seep into his existence. حَتَّى خَالَتَ لِسَانُهُ سَمَعَهُ فَصَارَ بَيْنَ أَهْلِهِ لَا يَنْتِقُ بِلِسَانِهِ لَا يَسْمَعُ بِسَمْعِهِ. Now death goes one step further. The first step was that simply he could see everyone, but he couldn't speak to them. Now the narration says death goes one step further. Now he can only see them, but he cannot speak to them, and he can barely hear them anymore. لا يسمع بسمعه. The only thing that's left for him is eyesight. It's almost as if he's zoning out from this world. Okay. يردد طرفه بالنظر في وجوههم. يردد means when you constantly go back and forth, you look at something. يردد. His eyesight goes between these relatives of his. And he looks at them, looks at his children, looks at his relatives. He can see all of this. Yes? He sees حركات الألسنتهم. He sees them, their tongues are moving. ولا يسمع رجع كلامهم. But he doesn't hear the sound of the words. So he sees the doctor talking, but he doesn't hear what the doctor is saying anymore. This is the next stage. Yes? ثم ازداد الموت التياتا به فقبض بصره. Until that moment comes where death takes another step now. Now what happens? Now he loses his eyesight as well. كما قبض سمعه وخرجت الروح من جسده. And then the soul starts to leave the body. فصار جيفة بين أهله. He lies there, lifeless amongst his relatives. قد أوحشوا من جانبه. Now they start to leave his side. You see, he's not there anymore. He's gone. وتباعدوا من قربه لا يسعد باكيا ولا يجيب داعيا. He can no longer have any effect in this world. Now he's a lifeless body. Lying there, he can't bring happiness to anybody. He can't respond to the call of anybody. No, that's it. His connection with this world has been cut off. Now this is the important part. The Imam is making this whole narration. This is from Nahjul Balagha. He's sharing all of this to say, where is this person headed? Where is he going? So at the end of all of this, all of the relatives leave, and the doctors and the nurses leave, and the friends leave. So it seems like it's a very lonely moment. It is a lonely moment, except for the one who brought something with him. Some people, they end up in this situation, it's very lonely for them. Other people end up in the same situation, it's not lonely at all. Because they've brought other things with them. Because they knew this moment was coming. Prepare for this moment. Okay, so what happens? Everyone leaves him. ثُمَّ حَمَلُوهُ إِلَى مَخَطٍ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Now they bring him into a portion of the earth. They're going to bury him. فَأَسْلَمُوهُ فِيهِ إِلَى عَمَلِهِ. Now they surrender him. They submit him. They submit him to who? Who are they leaving him to? To the dirt? To the ground? No. فَأَسْلَمُوهُ فِيهِ إِلَى عَمَلِهِ. Now they leave him to his deeds. Whatever deeds you brought. This point onwards, you have to go on this portion of the journey on your own. But guess what? It all depends what deeds you brought. And there are those who end up in that moment, God forbid, their hands are empty. And he says, I didn't bring anything. Oh, that's a very lonely moment. There are those, they live in those moments, they brought punishment with them. Yes? Look at these politicians today. They bomb children, the footage that we see for 7 months now. 7 months. What punishment is this person worthy of? What punishment are people worthy of if they support these types of things? You know, so many times we read verses of Quran and we wonder, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speak of these painful punishments over and over and over again? Can a human being reach this level of evil? And then you see, there are those, they come, humanitarian aid is going to come in, we're going to stop it. We're going to put obstacles on the road. This is the footage coming out, yes? We're going to put obstacles on the road, so when humanitarian aid wants to come in for women and children and families, it stopped. When the Quran says, on that day we will fill hellfire from people, you and I sit there and say, but how so? Oh, people seem very nice to me. They seem very good. Why is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so cruel? And then you start to see the realities of life and you find, no, there are in the millions people who either they themselves engage in these deeds or they support them. And the one who supports is like the one who engages. The one who eggs him on, the one who provides that political support, that political shield, financially, whatever, he's like him. Now I understand, the Quran says, on that day, لَأَمْلَأَنَّ جَهَنَّمَ مِنْكُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. We will fill the hellfire with people. Ya Allah, is it possible for people to reach this? Yes. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been doing this a lot longer than you and I. You and I, we're 20, 30, 50, 60 years old, and I flatter some of the brothers here. I call them 20-year-olds, yes? But we've been alive, 100 years is probably the record. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has been doing this a lot longer than you and I. He's seen tyrants, he's seen people who are so evil, you and I cannot even imagine it. And it's a blessing that you and I can't even imagine it. So he shows up in that moment, his hands are empty. وَانْقَطَعُوا عَنْ زَوْرَتِهِ. Then the Imam says, you know what? They leave him to his deeds, whatever your deeds are. Some narrations say the person comes into the grave starts to squeeze him. Some narrations say he comes with the right deeds, the grave opens up as far as eyesight. Which one is it? Oh, that just depends who's being buried. Not everyone has the same experience. The experience of death is like day and night in terms of its difference. One person walks in and the angels welcome him. The other person walks in and the angels are beating him. This is verses of the Quran that say this. Just depends who he is. وَانْقَطَعُوا عَنْ زَوْرَتِهِ. And then they leave him. You know, the best case scenario, they come and visit him once a month. I mean, how often are you going to go visit the graveyard? Once every 2 weeks? Once every week? Yeah, life has to move on. It's okay. Yes? They leave him. Now it's him and his deeds. No, whatever you did. Now, it's not even you and your deeds. It's you and your true self. It's you and you only. Because your deeds just reflect who you are. You might look like a human being. But if you starve millions of people, you're a monster that is wearing a suit and a tie. You might look like my old innocent grandpa, but if you starve people, you're a monster. In this world, you can get away with it. And in reality, now you see these students, they speak up. And as much as the media wants to make it look like they have no idea what they're doing, and sure, there's always, in every movement, there might be 10%, 50% who may not have a full appreciation, but the overwhelming majority of them know very well what they're doing. They know exactly what's happening, and they're not falling for it anymore. And the media can come and call them whatever they want to call them. They're not falling for it anymore. And how could they? How can you with this type of footage that's coming out of that part of the world? Yes? So the Quran tells us the people who come into the next world, they have two completely different experiences. Surah Anfal says, وَلَوْ تَرَى يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, if you could see, إِذْ يَتَوَفَّى الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا الْمَلَائِكَةِ, when the malaika come to take the soul of this human being out of his body, يَضْرِبُونَ وُجُوهَهُمْ وَأَدْبَارَهُم, they strike him on his face and on his back. This is a bad person. He has to deal with the punishment of what he did. يَضْرِبُونَ وُجُوهَهُمْ وَأَدْبَارَهُم وَذُوقُوا عَذَابَ الْحَرِيقِ, and then the angels tell him, feel the punishment of your deeds. Okay, this is one experience. So this is very scary. Well, yes, this is what you brought. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't bring this for you. This is why the next verse says, ذَلِكَ بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيكُمْ. This is exactly what you sent forward for yourself. وَأَنَّ اللَّهَ لَيْسَ بِظَلَّامٍ لِلْعَبِيدِ. Allah doesn't do injustice to anybody. No. This is what you sent forward. So this is one experience. And then the Quran says, yes, there's those, they have a completely different experience. It's the same death, it's the same angels. They have a completely different experience. What experience is this? He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ قَالُوا رَبُّنَا اللَّهُ ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا, those who say Allah is our Lord, ثُمَّ اسْتَقَامُوا, and then they tried their best to stay on this path, تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. Some say during their life, some say at the moment of death. تَتَنَزَّلُ عَلَيْهِمُ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. The angels come upon them. Over there, the angels came to strike them. Over there, these angels come, and لَا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا. You have nothing to worry about. You shouldn't be sad about anything. You shouldn't be worried about anything. Khawf is you being fearful of something that might happen in the future. Huzn is sadness that you have right now. They say, Allah takhafu wa la tahzanu. Neither do you have anything to worry about in the future, nor do you have to be sad right now as you're going through the different stages of death. This is one experience, that's one experience. Why? Because when they bring this person to the grave, أَسْلَمُوهُ فِيهِ إِلَىٰ عَمَلِهِ, they leave him to his deeds. What determines which experience is going to be is his deeds. What did you show up with? أَلَّا تَخَافُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَبْشِرُوا بِالْجَنَّةِ الَّتِي كُنْتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ. I've come to bring you the good news of that heaven that you always used to hear about. That heaven, they always used to say, when you leave this world, you're going to go to heaven. It's worth sacrificing. It's worth doing this salat. It's worth doing this fasting. People make fun of you. People don't take you seriously. It's okay. The angels say, وَأَبْشِرُوا. We've come to bring you the news of that heaven. كُنْتُمْ تُوعَدُونَ. You kept being told it was going to happen. We've come to give you that promise. نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. We will take your affairs into our hands. فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. What is the Quran saying? This is not narration. You can say, oh, I don't know about this. No, this is Quran. نَحْنُ أَوْلِيَاؤُكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. The angels say, we take your affairs into our own hands. I'm your wali. I'm managing your affairs. فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيا. While you were going through the day-to-day life of yours, because you were in the right camp, I, the angel, was taking over your affairs. It didn't feel like it to you over there. You may have not known even, but I was the one in charge. وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ. And now that you're entering into this world, وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَشْتَهِي أَنفُسُكُمْ وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا مَا تَدَّعُونَ. In this world, you can have anything that you like and anything that you ask for. نُزُلًا مِّن غَفُورٍ رَحِيمٍ. This is the banquet, the reward and the gift of Ghafur Rahim, of the forgiving one. This is one experience, brothers and sisters, and that is one experience. What determines it is no one but ourselves. You and I determine what type of experience we have when these relative of ours It's interesting, sometimes relatives, they are now saying their farewell to this loved one, and they're putting him in the grave, and they're, having him move on to the next chapter. They're crying. They're in a lot of pain. Sometimes the one they're burying is in even more pain compared to them, because he's now dealing with the punishment of his deeds, God forbid. Sometimes when they're putting him in the grave, he's in the midst of bliss and blessing. They're all crying. He's talking to the angels. It just depends who he is. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us amongst those who, when they bring us into our grave, the angels will welcome us with these words. The last point that inshallah I will make is this coming Saturday, there is a fundraising dinner, and this is another effort inshallah to raise funds for paying off the loan of the building. So if you haven't signed up inshallah, you can go ahead and do so in order to support inshallah our community. There's multiple speakers and guests that we will be benefiting from, myself and Sheikh Amin and Sayyid Hussein Razavi, as well as Sheikh Azhar Nasser, who will be visiting our community for the first time, and inshallah more times in the future as well. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد وعجل فرجهم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. صل على محمد. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. صل على محمد. وأن عليا حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم عليه. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله ربي. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسبح لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض الملك القدوس العزيز الحكيم. هو الذي بعث في الأميين رسولا منهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين. وآخرين منهم لما يلحقوا بهم وهو العزيز الحكيم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله ذو الفضل العظيم. مثل الذين حملوا التوراة ثم لم يحملوها كمثل الحمار يحمل أسفارا. بئس مثل القوم الذين كذبوا بآيات الله والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين. قل يا أيها الذين هادوا إن زعمتم أنكم أولياء لله من دون الناس فتمنوا الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا يتمنونه أبدا بما قدمت أيديهم والله عليم بالظالمين قل إن الموت الذي تفرون منه فإنه ملاقيكم ثم تردون إلى عالم الغيب والشهادة فينبئكم بما كنتم تعملون يا أيها الذين آمنوا إذا نودي للصلاة من يوم الجمعة فاسعوا إلى ذكر الله وذروا البيع ذلكم خير لكم إن كنتم تعلمون فإذا قضيت الصلاة فانتشروا في الأرض وابتغوا من فضل الله واذكروا الله كثيرا لعلكم تفلحون وإذا رأوا تجارة أو لهوا انفضوا إليها وتركوك قائما قل ما عند الله خير من اللهو ومن التجارة والله خير الرازقين الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقوم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف الله أكبر بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر اللهم
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله العظيم الحليم. لا إله إلا الله رب العرش الكريم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم إني أسألك موجبات رحمتك وعزائم مغفرتك والغنيمة من كل بر والسلامة من كل إثم. اللهم لا تدع لي ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا سقما إلا شفيته ولا عيبا إلا سترته ولا رزقا إلا بسطته ولا خوفا إلا آمنته ولا سوءا إلا صرفته ولا حاجة هي لك رضا ولي فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على
Just a quick reminder of upcoming programs and events, inshallah. Tomorrow, inshallah, the visit to the Marhumin is planned at Al-Baqi Cemetery with Sayyid Hussein Razavi. Please make sure, if you intend to attend, to register by end of day today, inshallah. Also, next week, Tuesday, May 14th, we have the continuation of the Tafsir and Tea sessions with Alama Zahra Hamka. This is a sisters only program, and the program is scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. Sisters are requested to attend this program. As the Sheikh alluded, inshallah, next Saturday, May 18th, CFK will be having our first ever fundraising dinner with esteemed guests and speakers like Sheikh Amin Rastani, Sheikh Mehdi himself, and Sayyid Hussein Razavi, alongside Sheikh Azhar Nasir, who will be coming to our community for the first time, inshallah. Your presence and participation is invaluable as we strive to achieve our new building fundraising goal, furthering our shared vision for the future of our community. In addition to purchasing tickets, we welcome and encourage you to consider making additional donations during the ticket purchase process. Registration is required for this event. You can register at the link present in our WhatsApp and email announcements. And then Sunday, May 19th, inshallah, we will be celebrating the birth of Imam Rida alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajahum, with a speech by Sheikh Azhar Nasir. Details for this event will be communicated on our WhatsApp as well. As always, our event details are posted on our webpage, cfkdfw.org, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and to our WhatsApp group. Jazakallah to all our sustaining members, donors, volunteers, and program sponsors for your contributions. If you are not a member yet, please consider becoming a member by contacting our membership director, Brother Asif Patel, for opportunities to donate, sponsor programs, or help behind the scenes. Please speak to myself or any of the existing volunteers. I would now like to request everyone to please recite a Surah Fatiha for Marhuma Shirvanu Ashiq Ali and the Marhumeen of Brother Mazhar and Sister Mehnaz Abbas and family. Marhuma Rubab Banu bint Haji Nanji, Marhum Khurram Raza Ali, and the Marhumeen of Brother Sadiq Makhraj and family. And let us please also include our own Marhumeen and the Marhumeen of the Ummah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه صلاة العصر الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد الله أكبر سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الله أكبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم ارزقنا توفيق الطاعة وبعد المعصية اللهم عجل لوليك الفرج. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد، وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقوم. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم الرحمن الرحيم ذو الجلال والإكرام، وأسأله أن يتوب علي توبة عبد ذليل خاضع فقير بائس مسكين مستكين مستجير لا يملك لنفسه نفعا ولا ضرا ولا موتا ولا حياة ولا نشورا. اللهم إني أعوذ بك من نفس لا تشبع، ومن قلب لا يخشع، ومن علم لا ينفع، ومن صلاة لا ترفع، ومن دعاء لا يسمع. اللهم إني أسألك اليسر بعد العسر، والفرج بعد الكرب، والرخاء بعد الشدة. اللهم ما بنا من نعمة فمنك، لا إله إلا أنت، أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. الله.
محمد. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى، السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين، السلام على 9 المعصومين من ذرية الحسين، السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل